Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on? I'm going back.
Welcome back, everybody. The Bacon and Egg Show, Monday edition, episode number, what are we at? 48 on
48.
April 19th, 420 Eve, 2021. Jay, what's going on, man?
A lot, man. Historic weekend for Austin FC. We're going to get into that in a little bit, I know. But so that was kind of a cool thing to always first game of a first match for a club or whatever, first time coming out, historic sort of a deal there. So that was nice to see that. And everything else. Weather's beautiful. Got a lot going on around the 40 acres. So yeah, everything's good. How about you, man? Everything all right?
Yeah, man, everything's good. We had a long time coming, but the first ever Austin FC match this past weekend. Let's start there. Let's just go ahead and jump right into that. A little match recap. Austin starts off with a defeat on the road, lose 2-0 to LAFC, but some promising things came from it, though. I mean, what were some of the takeaways for you in that match? I mean, LAFC is one of the best teams in the league. I know there's the Vela substitution mix-up in the first half that kind of, seemed like it was going to be something that would be beneficial to Austin. But what was your what were your takeaways? An expansion team against one of the better teams in MLS.
It looked like a team that has only played someone else 5 or 6 times before that match. I mean, I think from the preseason, we got a pretty good takeaway of what this club was going to look like just off of its raw talent, and that's just going to push forward. It's going to take chances. And we saw some of that against LAFC on Saturday, but the finishes weren't there in the end. And for me, the connectivity between the front players and the midfield, it wasn't there enough. They look like a team that hasn't gelled yet, and that's okay. Like this is it's 34 games in this season. Like there's a long way to go. It's a top flight team that they played against in LAFC. But yeah, I mean, the positive takeaway, I guess the most positive thing I'll take away from this was that you saw the ability to get forward that this team has. I was very impressed by that. Just it's there, and those chances will continue to come, and the goals will come from it as they become a little bit more cohesive in the middle. But that to me was my most positive takeaway, I guess. Well, just first impression, I guess. What were your first impressions from the team on Saturday?
Yeah, I think some things that stood out for me. I thought Stuver was good in goal. I think that with a club that the way that they built, and I think we've discussed this before, like there wasn't a clear number one goalkeeper going into this season who they picked up in the expansion draft and free agency. And so it looks like he won out, and at least at this point it's going to be the number one. But I thought he was solid. I mean, you can't put the 2-0 on him. I think that it was just, especially the second goal, which was just a, 2-0 basically, and just finished it off. But like, I think he was solid. I think the back line, something we talked about during the preseason, like this looked like a team that was going to score goals, but the defense was going to be a little leaky. I think the defense actually looked pretty good. I think in terms of like just being a solid, they seem more cohesive than the front end of the lineup, which, I'll get to that in a second, but I think Ring ended up playing a good game. I know we were commenting about kind of that first 15, 20 minutes or so of the first half that he just didn't look, he looked kind of all over the place a little bit. You kind of saw him in some bad spots, some bad touches, but I think he really came on and really kind of got the midfield going. But yeah, to your point, the attack really looked like it's, they just need some sharpness. They just need to get more familiar. I think we saw some good things out of Pochettino, out of Dominguez. Redis on the right wing had some good looks, getting balls in, but they're going to have to shake this thing out. I think you've talked about Gallagher a bit going back to the offseason. I think when Hosen came off and Gallagher came on, he looked a little sharper than I think Hosen looked. I really do wonder if striker is going to be an area of priority as this season goes along. Because
Well,
I
I
think
think
I like what
Gallagher
they
is going
had
to
in the
get his
attack
shot.
placement wise. What's that?
I'm sorry. I think Gallagher is going to get his shot.
Yeah.
And he'll get his time up there because they're just, like you said, there's just a little, who's going to be the guy? It's up for grabs right now. Who's going to be the guy that's going to step up and fill that role? And no, I agree, man, that for as much as there's some question marks that you see are still there. You also saw the positives on both, on up and down the field. You saw it at different times. So yeah, it's an expansion team. I mean, it's an expansion team
Yeah.
playing against one of the best teams in the league.
Right. And that's what
It was an expected result. And I think our Randy Rodeo mentioned even that, I believe he was the one that said it was like, it didn't feel like, it wasn't really indicative of the score line. Like 2-0 was the final score, but it wasn't like an ass kicking 2-0, like despite the fact that LAFC really controlled possession for the first 10 minutes or so before Austin FC got off the roller skates and kept the ball a little bit. After that, though, it evened out. And it didn't feel like, oh man, it's 2-0. It should be, it's just a demoralizing defeat at 2-0, which 2-0 defeats can be. You can just feel like it should have been more. I felt like this was a fair result for this first match, and one that was definitely in the realm of possibility in our mind for sure. So that's it. First match. Let's see what's going on. Like I said, 34 matches in the schedule. So, and they won't get to play at home until when?
June 19th.
June 19th. They're going to
Yep.
get a bunch of tests on the road, and then they're going to go on the road. Pardon me. They're going to go on the road and learn how to play as a team on the road, and then you come home, and hopefully you'll see them, in the friendly confines, go on a little run as they start to gel, which this team is capable of doing. It's a talented roster. There's no doubt about it. It's a talented roster,
and you could see that on Saturday, and that's what like you mentioned, that didn't feel like a 2-0 real kind of like where LA really controlled the game and just there was no chance. I mean, a little bit more sharpness up front. Austin scores. Like the looks were there, the chances were there. Nearly made it 1-1 late in the match, and then that's when the second goal came back the other way for LA. And that's the thing. LA's also been playing some CONCACAF Champions League matches, like meaningful games leading up to this season opener at this point already. And so that's the thing. But Austin's got a chance now, taking a trip up to Denver for next weekend to play the Colorado Rapids. And that's a game that's, I think a lot of people going into the LAFC match were like, hey, look, it's the opening expansion team opening day at one of the best clubs in the league. I think that was reasonable to come out of that feeling like that's how it kind of played out. But this is Austin can go get 3 points in Denver this weekend. And I think if they continue to gel and continue to put it together, I think that's really reasonable to go up there and get a win. And we'll see. We'll have the breakdown next week, I would think. But here we are. We're talking about actual regular season professional sports in Austin that have started. Like it's here, and it'll be a big day when the first home game's here on June 19th. So, but
it's going to be here. It's going to be here before we know it. And it's going to be, the environment will be crazy. Like people have been waiting for this moment for a long time. There's a lot of passionate soccer fans in Austin, and that's going to be an environment that, while the club has said and the supporters groups have said they want to remain like a friendly club, like keep it friendly, sort of, like I think that even at that rate, this is still going to be a place that you don't really want to play, just because it's going to, or maybe you do because you love that sort of an environment. But I think it'll be big match feel every home game in Austin, because that's what these supporters are going to make it. But real quick, I just wanted to say, a number one pick, Danny Pereira, he looked at times like he's really he's figuring out this game at this level. I think that he's going to get the playing time that it's going to take for him to find his legs and contribute. So if you watch that first match on Saturday and you're like, wow, that guy was the number one pick, give him a little bit of time. I think you're going to like what develops from him as he continues to get more time on the pitch.
Yeah, I think aside, related to that, him being in that midfield with Alex Ring, I think that 15-20 minutes that Ring put together where he was a little shaky probably affected Pereira's play a bit too. You have to think, well, for one, the fact that Josh Wolf gave Pereira the start opening day, he's in the first ever 11 for Austin FC when there are other options in the midfield. You know, Fagundes, Stroud, like there are other guys that Wolf could have gone with that have played, that have more experience or any experience in MLS, where Pereira's the number one pick. So for him to actually get that starting 11 nod was huge. But I do think that maybe some of that early judgment of how Pereira looked early in the first half of the first half probably had to do with like Alex Ring not being Alex Ring. And you have to think, if you're a rookie, you're coming in like, hey, I'm partnered next to the captain and going to be one of the, this guy is one of the better holding midfielders and just, calming influences in the midfield. And when he's not performing that way, you have to think it puts a little bit more pressure on Pereira to, kind of play out of his game a bit. And I think we saw that. And I think that's one of those things that as they build that trust where Pereira can start getting forward a little bit more and getting more involved in the attack like he did at Virginia Tech, I think it'll be fine. I was honestly pretty happy with the lineup and the way that it balanced out. I think Wolf had a good selection, and it just, let's sort that striker situation out, and we might have something here.
Yeah,
have something
for
pretty
sure.
good.
Yes.
So,
some days you have a good lineup, and you just run into a better one, and I think that's kind of what happened on Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, yeah, let's transition a bit. Let's get into let's get caught up on the Runnin Horns here. We have, obviously, we've discussed the Chris Beard hire. We've been getting into that, but we've got some we're actually starting to see a team take shape here. Jay, you want to lead us off on the transfer news that's been dropping for the past week or so?
Yeah, so we knew that Beard was going to have to come in and basically build this team from scratch. Excuse me, give me 1 sec.
Sure.
Just get so excited talking about Chris Beard running this team, get all worked up.
It happens, man. It happens.
All right. So we knew Beard was going to have to build this team from scratch, even with some guys, the possibility of some guys returning, using that extra year of eligibility, or just maybe not deciding not to go professional, even though that's an option for a handful of those guys that have been here for a while. So it's sort of been one of those things where we've seen some of these guys that have entered the transfer portal come off, and me, you, and Mike are sitting there in the group text and twiddling our thumbs and waiting, and now we're starting to see the fruits of Chris Beard's labor come out through the transfer portal. So I'll start off with Christian Bishop, who last played for Creighton. Basically, he can play the 4, the 5, he can play power forward, he can play center, and what Chris Beard will do, it's just a guy that can get up and down the floor, a big that can get up and down the floor and play good defense, which is exactly what this guy does. He was one of the best shot blockers in the Big East. He averaged a block a game last season, and it's just a presence in the paint. But he also can score the basketball in the paint as well. He's really one of those guys that in the paint on both sides of the floor really is a force. The type of guy that you would think that Chris Beard, would be interested in. So I was very pleased to hear about that get. What did you think about Bishop, Kerry?
Yeah, it's a big get. I think the word I was hearing a lot discussed, like on local radio and stuff, was like lobs. This is the kind of guy that's going to get up above the rim. He's athletic. He's a big guy that you can just put it up there and let him go get it. It's just interesting, kind of to go back to something you mentioned before you mentioned Bishop, about the players that are coming back. And we haven't heard from Jericho Sims yet about his return, but you start thinking like if a guy like Sims comes back along with a player like Bishop, you just start talking about the size, the length, and the athleticism that you can have near the basket, and it's gonna be fascinating. I'm a big fan of the Bishop pickup. He provides something that I don't want to say is totally different, but when you lose, like Kai Jones, that kind of athleticism and stuff going to the league, like to get another kind of long body in there that can do a lot of different things for you is huge.
And he's like he's when you talk about guys that run the floor, catch lobs, and block shots, you think of guys like Jericho Sims. So I mean, like when to me, that's sort of the role that Bishop fills.
Yep.
Which any good basketball team, it doesn't matter if you're Chris Beard or if you're Rick Barnes or if you're Shaka Smart or whoever, any successful basketball team has a big that can run the floor and play defense, block shots and can catch some lobs. Like you see, it happens every single game that there's teams that just get buckets, and the only reason that those bigs are on the floor, they score 6 or 8 points a game, they catch 3 or 4 lobs and clog up the paint on defense. And this guy does that, but he's athletic. He's not just a guy that's going to stand there and clog things up on
Right.
offense, I guess is what I should be sure to make clear. Like he moves, he gets around. He's helpful on offense. He's not just a stand around guy and bulldoze anybody. But no, great stuff. Who else is standing out for you in this transfer portal?
Well, the one that dropped before Christian Bishop was Timmy Allen from Utah. This guy, first team All Pac-12. Just another really high quality player picked up in the transfer portal. What do you got on Allen?
It just does a little bit of everything, with whether it's assists or rebounds or steals. Okay, so average 17 points a game, so he can score the basketball. 6.5 rebounds a game, almost 4 assists a game. Almost 1.3 steals a game. The guy that players that fill stat sheets that aren't a liability really anywhere. But you can't ever have enough of those kinds of players.
Right.
And being able to have a guy that, he can score, because 17 points, averaging 17 points in college basketball, you can score the ball. Like he's a good scorer. He's unselfish too, though, with the 4 assists a game, and plays defense, a willing defender at 1.3 steals. So, anyways, man, that's Allen he might end up being the best player that they get out of the transfer portal. What were you sort of feeling about Allen?
I agree. He might end up. I think I saw something that Texas, and this might be incorrect, so don't fully quote me on this, but something that Texas hadn't had someone that averaged over 15 points in like a decade. It's like going back to like 2010 or something like that was the last time that Texas had somebody average 15 points a game. And for me, that's just kind of, for one, that's mind boggling. And I'll have to feel like I should verify that before putting that out there. But you talk about someone that's coming in averaging over 17, all Pac-12, I know that, we've got, some good players coming back with, Andrew Jones, Febris, like some guys that can score.
Yeah.
But is it that far-fetched to think that Allen might be the leading offensive weapon on this team next season? No, with who we know is coming back and like what this roster is looking like at this point. That can change, but like this guy might be the full, like the offensive catalyst, the go-to shooter in big situations, all those kinds of things. And he's got the proven track record. He did it. First team at a Power 5, first team all Power 5 conference, and with the numbers that he puts up. So
if you're worried about Matt Coleman not coming back, there's your Matt Coleman right there. Same type of player that you need, that you want on your team. Fills the same sort of role. Going to take the big shots at the end of the game. Going to be a leader. Going to score the basketball when you need it. Like Coleman still may come back, but I don't know. some of those guys, I feel like you're gonna look at the professional and look at them starting to make some money, and it's like, do I want to stick around and be a part of this brand new thing, or do I want to kind of sort of go out and do my own thing? And that was my time there. It's just but there's some big names that are still sort of they just haven't made an outright decision yet.
So I was a little incorrect. So last year, Andrew Jones averaged 15.4. I think it was Andrew Jones that was the first Texas player to average over 15 in however
Since
long.
2010.
I'm trying to fact check this right now. So I don't want to,
Well,
I want to make sure I'm not speaking,
yeah,
and that's
well,
about as far as my stat digging is going. It looks like, well, anyway.
but yeah, I know you're right though. He could step in and be the immediate catalyst in the offense. He could be the guy that everything would go through. And I think that that's something that fans of Texas basketball should be pleased with. It was a really, really, really good get for Chris Beard. And the third guy here that he's landed is also no slouch as well, coming in out of Kentucky.
Yeah, and that's what you mentioned, like a Matt Coleman replacement. I almost kind of feel like that's where Devin Askew is, this transfer coming in from Kentucky, in that it sounded like he was recruited as a point guard, but still has some flexibility where he can play on the court. And I mean, yeah, he was number 37 in the nation in the 2020 class, and things just didn't quite work for him at Kentucky. And I mean, there were a lot of things that didn't quite work at Kentucky this season. So how much of that do you want to put on Askew? Like, do you think essentially Texas is getting a player with 4 full years of eligibility left? Like, this is, you can almost consider him like part of the signing class, if you will.
Yep.
And to get a player of this caliber that, even though it didn't click in Lexington, is pretty solid, and a guy that could step in right away and be the point guard if things roll that way for him. So
Yeah, and I think it's a good point to make. But I also think that with the 4 years of eligibility left, if Beard gets this thing rolling, like, that's your long-term answer to the point guard position.
right.
So even if Allen's on the ball, or if he's off the ball, and you have Askew in their facility, because I think that, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how, especially since we don't even know who else is going to come in this class. This isn't done yet. There's still some names out there that I'm sure those phones are blowing up, and Beard is working hard to fill out this roster. So this is going to be one of the most interesting experiments, I guess, that, because you're going to, so many of these teams are going to just be sort of patchworked, like you said, you're recruiting some of these guys that basically amounting to your recruiting class
Right.
for the year, and to change over that high of a percentage of your roster in any one season. Like, this is either going to be really awesome to watch some of this talent assembled, because these coaches have been able to handpick players specifically for their styles, and there's college tape on them, and it's just a different level of recruiting that these coaches have been able to do. Because, like, obviously, yeah, the transfer portal's been there and coaches have been doing this, but just to this level, the sheer numbers, the sheer percentage of players switching rosters next season, or new players, I guess, when you include the players that are recruited in, it's going to be crazy to watch.
Well, and talking about this roster, so we mentioned Jones and Febris. We know Brock Cunningham's coming back. Jalen Tyson and the one lone signee that was the Tech signee and now is following Chris Beard to Texas. Where are we at on the players that have yet to announce their intentions? Which I might be let me know if I'm missing somebody here, but we got Jericho Sims, Greg Brown, Courtney Ramey, and Matt Coleman. Am I miss? Oh, we already know Kai Jones is going pro. That's done. But I don't think I'm missing anybody there. But where are we at on that group?
Trying to think. I don't think we're any farther than we were a week ago. I mean, I wonder, Chris Beard has to, there has to be this sort of mutual understanding here, right? Like, listen, guys, you're a part of you've been a part of this program. If you're coming back, there's a spot for you, but I kind of need to know so I can fill out this roster. Like there's kind of got to be some sort of thing there where it's like you're welcome, but when can we know? And maybe that's the date that you have to declare for the NBA draft, or maybe there's just sort of an understanding there where these guys are going to be all right. I'm coming back or I'm not. But no, yeah, that's sort of what's leaving a lot of this up in the air. And is the writing on the wall? When you bring in a Christian Bishop, it does Jericho Sims look at that and say, well, that's what I do well. Like is Chris Beard going to want to run with his guy that he brought in? I feel like that has to play a factor in the decisions for some of these guys, especially when you're bringing in guys like Bishop, Timmy Allen, Askew, who was a top 40 recruit in his class, and he actually reclassified. He would have been the number one point guard in his class, but he reclassified coming out to go to Kentucky.
Right.
So, I mean, like that, they're amassing this talent here. And while all of those, Matt Coleman's history, where he came from, Courtney Ramey, like, these guys were all heralded players. So how do you fit in? Do you want to fit in? Is that a thing where I'd rather go do my thing elsewhere? Like I said earlier, like, I don't know. There's one more year in the drum, it's like, do you want to come back and play for Chris Beard? How do you get a different read on that from some of these guys? Like, are you,
To
what are you
me,
thinking?
the longer that this goes without any kind of announcement saying otherwise, the more I think each kind of has their own individual circumstance, but the more I think that they're coming back. Like, you would have thought, okay, so we'll start with Matt Coleman. Given his relationship with Shaka Smart, given how long he's been on campus, we're not talking about someone that's coming back. Like, this isn't like coming back for their junior year. Like, this would be his
Mhm.
5th year at Texas, and Shaka's gone. This is a perfectly ripe opportunity for him to either go test the waters with the NBA or follow Shaka to Marquette or do something different. Go back to the East Coast where he's originally from and maybe play there for years. So but the longer that this goes without any kind of announcement of like intention of doing those things, whether that's going into the portal or doing something like that, the more I think that there is a chance he comes back. That maybe Chris Beard is pitching to him the idea of like, come back, you're a leader, let's run it back and let's see what we can do this one season. I do think Ramey, I could definitely see Ramey coming back. Out of the 4 that we're discussing, I think he's probably the most I feel confident about coming back. Sims is probably the second most confident because I feel like that's another one that, with the way that his stock was rising towards the end of the season, especially in that Big 12 tournament, like, that's another one that if we haven't heard any, like, the longer it goes with him, the more I think it's more likely he comes back to Texas. And I'm starting to feel that way about Greg Brown. Like, people are talking about that he's kind of not being considered for the first round of the NBA draft now. And if that's the case, why not come back? And I think that's going to be more one of those things. Like, he could go G League, he can do something else. I think with Greg Brown's situation, it's more what does he want to do for the next year? Is it going to be try to raise his NBA stock, getting paid in the G League, or because he's not going to transfer anywhere. If he's going to play college ball, it's going to be at Texas. So I don't know. Just the longer this goes on, because you keep seeing this throughout the entire country, how many players have already entered the portal, how many have already declared their intention for whatever their next steps are. We haven't heard anything. And that means Chris Beard is going full on the full court press recruitment to get these guys back. And the fact that we haven't heard anything means they're listening. And if they're listening and he continues the pitch, then I think it becomes more likely that they return. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Jay? Like who out of this group, if you were to put likelihoods on this, like what are you thinking?
I think that's probably fair. I think Ramey. I mean, for me, Sims' stock won't. It's never been higher, right? Like I feel like Sims is a guy that I almost feel like would be able. So here's the deal. Based off of what I saw on the court last year, I would draft Sims before I drafted Greg Brown.
And that's totally fair.
There's no way I would take Greg Brown with the first round pick in the NBA draft. Like, I know that there were those mock drafts throughout. He's a guy that if he would have gone out of been able to be drafted out of high school, probably would have been a top 15 or 20 pick, and then would have gone in and sat, would have learned the game, pretty probably, judging by what he did last year, I would have guessed slowly, because he didn't improve last year. Like he was non-existent for long stretches of time. So yeah, I think Greg Brown might be the most likely to come back based off of that performance last year, because what do you have on tape like that these coaches are going to be like, that makes me want to draft this guy even with a late first round pick? Like I think that there's just better value to be had at this point with what you've seen from Greg Brown. So I think he might be one of the more likely ones to come back with Ramey. I just feel like Coleman has sort of done his time, and I think he's sort of just going to go take his next step, whatever that path is, going to playing in Europe somewhere or whatever that is. But no, for me, I think Brown is one of the more likely to return than on that list.
That's interesting. I mean, we talk about what's already on, who's already declared that they're coming back. We talked about the transfer pickups, and there could be some more depending on what the roster shakes down at. But you talk about, let's say this plays out to where Sims, Brown, and Ramey are all back. This is a pretty impressive roster just at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And there's still space to build. And that's, there's still room. So this isn't a case of like Chris Beard being like, in a Matt Coleman situation, like, thanks, but no thanks. Like, we just don't have the room. Better for you to go look somewhere. That's not the case. And yeah, I mean, God, what a coup that would be for Chris Beard if he gets 3 of those 4 back.
There's a lot. There's going to have to be an understanding between that on this team. Like there's a lot of people that are going to want the rock. It's like, basically, it's like you're coming back to play for a national championship if that's why you're coming back next year. Like Greg Brown's draft stock needs to improve. That's why he would come back. But if you're Jericho Sims coming back, you're coming back because you think you can win a title. I don't think, because I think the NBA is going to be very high on Jericho Sims. You can't, especially with the way that the league runs up and down the floor now and scores, 120 points a night for each side. Like bigs that can run up and down the floor and block, and catch lobs and block shots. You have to have those in the NBA to be successful. I think Sims will be viewed very favorably by NBA scouts. And Greg Brown has all the talent to be that guy. Like the thing is I know, we saw flashes of the talent where he's just like, oh, I get it. That's why this guy was so highly regarded coming out of high school, is because there it is right there. But for me, it was just too few and far between. The opportunities were too few and far between that we saw of him being that guy. Whereas you know exactly what you're getting out of Jericho Sims. You know the type of ball player that you're getting out of him, and you've seen him develop and progress year after year after year to do it. That's the kind of guy I want to draft as an NBA as an NBA exec, not a guy who I know has all the talent in the world when he's there and when he decides he wants to use it, when his head is totally in the game. But when have you seen that from Greg Brown? I know it's there, but it's not consistent enough, you know? So that to me is why I think people like when Greg, because the feelers are out right now, right? Greg Brown's people are like, hey, what's up? You know, like, let's tell me what he's getting his draft grade, his draft, whatever, you know, from NBA folks. And I guarantee you they're telling him like these teams that they haven't seen any development out of it. You know, you need to go back and you need, I bet he's hearing stuff like that from at least some of these NBA teams. And but for him to come back though in a Chris Beard sort of a setting and for Chris Beard to put that player into the best position to be successful, which is what he does with lesser talent. So you're damn sure that Chris Beard is going to put a guy that has the skills, the raw ability that Greg Brown has. You know, Chris Beard will put him in a position to be successful.
Bingo. That's exactly where I was going to go with saying that's got to be the pitch, right? That's got to be the pitch. That's got to be Chris Beard sitting down with Greg Brown, Sims, and those guys and saying like, hey, I've seen what you can do. Give me a year with you. And I guarantee like to harness the talent that is there. And that's why even Ramey, we talk about like, if, you know, Ramey ball's been a thing that we've discussed all season, but like, you think about what Chris Beard can do with that guy and turn him into like harness that energy that he's got. Like he's the kind of player, like he is exactly the kind of player that Chris Beard can turn into, first team all Big 12 defender with the energy and everything that he puts out on the court. And that's where, I mean, I think, yeah, is Jericho Sims stock rising as of last year? Of course it was. But if you can make that guy almost like a focal point and actually like every night make him a guy that's just bullying on both the offensive and defensive sides, talk about what his stock turns into at that point. And that's, I mean, that has to be Chris Beard's pitch is give me a year I'll get you in a better spot than you're in now.
I think I just think that for me, I think we know exactly, we know exactly Sims's development. I don't know that because
you don't think he can go much further than where he's at? At this level, at least.
Right. I don't know that his ceiling is necessarily like he has that much more to gain, I guess, by sticking around. But there's nothing that, you know, there's nothing saying that Chris Beard wouldn't
Sure
put a spotlight on him. But I think Shaka actually did a nice job of doing that with Sims throughout the season as well. So I don't know. Again, I don't know that Beard is gonna. I think we know the player that Sims is, and I think Sims knows the player that he is. And if last year was the best sort of that version of him that we're going to see, and that's why I think that's why I think his stock at this point, knowing that he could get drafted, in my opinion, that's sort of what is making me feel like he would go. But no, that's the pitch though. You're right. It's like, why would I stay behind when I'm going to be drafted? Well, listen, like you might be a second round pick right now, but stick around in my system and we go far and we win and you're on TV a lot and blah, blah, blah. Sky's the limit, you know?
It's jet sweep time.
It's always jet sweep time.
Which is perfect timing here as we'll transition over to some spring football. We hope that defense is preparing for the jet sweep, unlike Tom Herman's. I'm not even getting to see. Here we go again. I'm not even gonna do it. Done with that. All right. Spring football.
30 seconds into the football segment, man.
Spring football. We have some news. We have some news on the spring football front. Denzel Okafor was interviewed this past week, and I think Sark might have to pull him aside and have a little talk with him about this. I guarantee somebody did. He mentioned that Casey Thompson's getting the majority of the first team snaps at quarterback over Hudson Card. Anything to take away from that?
No, I think we sort of expected that. I mean, this was his team, and throughout the off season, like He's been the guy in the program. He's the one that the guys are most familiar with. It's not a surprise to me that he's currently, like, as we speak right now, in that role. And I don't have a problem with him being in that role. I think the card being the wild card. Damn it! I didn't mean to do that. Man,
That's going to
see,
be a thing, isn't it? If
I hope.
he wins the job,
Uh,
or even if he's the backup. Here they're bringing the wild card off the bench here to.
that's the pack. Are they going to call it the wild card package? Oh man, see, this is what we've become, man. We got all this really good stuff to talk about here. So, anyways, Herman did this to us. Anyways, actually, the last decade plus.
Stop it.
Okay, all right, yeah, all right. So, anyways, I'm not surprised, but the intrigue of what Card has to offer, that's why I'm really looking forward to this spring game is to see what Card gets in some meaningful snaps in front of people. But no, I'm not surprised. Was that so your takeaway too? Did you sort of expect that this would be the case?
Yeah. I know Sark said it was going to be basically 50-50 in terms of snaps. When they opened up spring camp, he said they're going to split time 50-50. It's not surprising to hear that Thompson's getting the bulk of the carries, getting the bulk of the snaps. I also wouldn't be surprised if we get into summer and fall camp and we start hearing about, you can already hear it. You can already see the like 995, the rumor merchant headlines of like Card evening the battle and the quarterback. Now he's getting those snaps and it's going to be we're not going to know who the starting quarterback's going to be until opening day against Louisiana. It just has that written all over it. I think Sark's clever here. I think that if which quarterback, if you were to go ahead and name a starter today, or let's say at the spring game, which quarterback is more likely to transfer immediately?
I guess probably Thompson. Like if you said Card was going to be the guy, like if one of those guys would leave, I would think it would be. I think Thompson would be the likelier of the two to transfer out.
He's been sitting behind Ellinger for years. He wants to play. If Card was getting the majority of the snaps now and the writing was on the wall that Card was going to be the starter in the fall, Thompson's gone. Then all of a sudden you've got Charles Wright as your backup, who could be fine. We talked about him before. He's got a high floor kind of guy, but like that's not an ideal situation for Sark. So if you get into the fall and get all the way up to the first game and you go, all right, Card, you're going out for the first series. You've at least maintained that quarterback transfer issue into the fall, right?
I see.
I'm not saying that that's his intent. I'm not saying that that's like the sole reason behind all this, but there is. But when you have someone that's like an underclassman and someone who's been on campus for a while, and this is that kind of stuff, that balancing of like player expectations. We're talking about a quarterback that's already been in the portal before at Texas, and that's where, there is some personnel management here that has to happen. And I think that is that the sole reason? No, but I think also given the landscape of college football, we'd be a little naive to not think that this has something to do. Like there are these kinds of factors that go into like when we're trying to make lineup decisions, and Casey Thompson wants to play, and he very well may be the starting quarterback in the fall. But for someone who just got to campus a few months ago with Sarkisian, I just don't, unless Casey Thompson is just lighting it up, I have a hard time thinking that he's already starting to settle on who his starting quarterback is now. And I think we're going to hear about all the evening out that's going to happen as we lead up to the first game. So that's my takeaway from it. But
well, and again, it may be the evening out just because Thompson gets 60 out of the four and Card gets 40. You can see just as much out of those 40 plays that Card makes as you can in the 60 that Thompson would make. You know what I mean? Like, so just because he's only getting 40% of the snaps, you can see just as much, just exactly what you want to see out of him. You can make him throw every throw you want to see him throw. You can make him, go against every read you want to see him make in that amount of time. So I don't mind even if you are, but Thompson, that's why it's not surprising to me that we expected that, because he was on campus. Like you said, all those reasons that you listed, like that's why he would make the most sense to be the guy, especially
Yeah.
this first spring, because
Yeah.
when you're coming in as a coach from outside, first year head coach of the program, why wouldn't you let the guy that's been here, and then play that bowl game half or whatever, so you see that guys were hyped to play for him, and all that stuff, it's there. Why would you come in and rock that boat if it's like, oh no, it doesn't, it's a good point to make, but it also makes the most sense to me that Thompson would be the farthest ahead.
Oh, for sure.
So with what you're
Right.
going to get, because Card, with everything else that's going on, with being able to have an extra year of eligibility and being able to have, there's just so much there with him, just being able to sit back and say, okay, let me take this in. Let me really learn this Steve Sarkisian offense. And when Thompson's gone, I can step in. I'll be the guy, because I know that he'll go with the guy that's been on campus. That's, and if I do everything that I do and play to my best ability, I'm going to be the next guy up in this program. To me, it just makes the most sense. Now, if Thompson goes out and he just lays an egg, and he looks like it's too big for him, then you obviously consider making that switch. But I just think it makes the most sense to give Thompson the first go at this for many, many reasons.
Sure. Yeah.
But I mean, it's not surprising. I think Okafor just sort of said out loud the thing that everybody's thinking is happening anyway.
Right. Right.
I don't think it's that big of a deal. I just think that
No. And that's what, at the end of the day, Sark's primary responsibility is to win. And what, that's, we talk about like personnel management and keeping people from transferring and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, it's about winning football games, and he's going to play the quarterback that is going to give him the best chance to do that. So, but, yeah, Jay, we're coming up on time here a little bit. We got to, here on our Monday edition. I just wanted to give a quick, I know there's some things we didn't quite get to today, but a quick shout out for the Texas baseball team. The now number 3 ranked Sluggin Horns, and they are just knocking the ball all over the universe. They swept Abilene Christian this weekend, which is good for a University of Texas athletic team to do. Beat Abilene Christian, as you're probably, as Texas is expected to do.
right.
32-2 was the total score over this past weekend against ACU. They've now won 13 straight. They're heading to the happiest place on earth, Sewell Park, Tuesday to play Texas State. And then big trip. A week or two ago, this looked like a bigger trip. A trip to Stillwater to play Oklahoma State. Oak State was previously number 13 in the country. The latest poll, they've fallen to number 24. They're kind of on the skid a little bit, but still going to be a tough trip for Texas. And this Big 12 race is now kind of shaking down. We're kind of seeing the separation up at the top with Texas ranked number three in the country, Tech at number 5, TCU number 8. Texas still has to play both those teams in series. I believe the Tech series is going to be in Austin and TCU is going to be in Fort Worth. So it's coming down to it. We're getting to this stretch run in the conference. I think those are the Oklahoma State, Tech, and TCU series, and then West Virginia, I believe, will wrap up conference play. I was watching the game yesterday, the Abilene Christian game, and Keith Moreland, he said it. He mentioned something like this again. He said, "This is the best baseball I've seen played on this campus in over a decade." And the way they're playing, it's hard to argue with them. And they're putting together quite an impressive season here.
It's definitely the best the bats have looked in a long time. That's for sure. I mean,
for sure.
The pitching has been in and out over the last decade and has shown up at big times. But the way that the bats have consistently been swinging, that's the biggest takeaway for me with where this program is right now. And you don't win 13 games in a row by accident. Like that's sort of one of at any level of baseball, like you're good. Like this is a really, really good team. That's gonna, again, a midweek game against Texas State. It's one of those where you're like, dang, like that's one of the ones that I look at that can trip you up, because Texas State's a good program, and I think that Oklahoma State that's still a really good team.
Absolutely.
Like, I know they've had their issues over the past week or so. That's
Absolutely.
still a really good team.
And they're going to be at home
program.
with a chance to get back on the right foot against the top team in the league. No, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's going to be tough. And then, like you said, those two series coming up, those big, if College Game Day went to baseball series, that sort of thing, they would be at those series with Texas and Texas Tech, and then Texas against TCU. That's a sort of level of competition that's coming up on the schedule. So when the pitchers are on like they've been on, and not putting guys on, not giving a lot of, you're not seeing a lot of first guy of the innings getting walked. You're not seeing a lot of that. They're throwing strikes, they're getting ahead in the count, and it's making it easier to pitch to counts as opposed to worrying about, oh my God, I'm behind the count, we're getting runners on base. No, like they've been doing everything the right way, and that's how you win 13 in a row. So yeah, it's looking good for the Sluggin Horns. See how that continues to develop, and it doesn't hurt to have a guy that goes yards 7 times in 6 games. And
Melendez, man, that guy is
he was on a heater. That was quite a stretch that he was on there. But that, again, if that was the only reason why they were being successful, is because that one guy's everybody's doing it. Everybody's contributing. It's up and down the lineup, and it's different guys on different nights, and that's how you win at a pace like these guys have won at. So for sure, it's they've got it rolling on the 40 acres over there. What an exciting time right now to talk about things in that Longhorn athletic department, with the baseball team playing so well, 2 fresh coaches in basketball and football. We're really, really good time to be talking about stuff going on 40 acres. And
not to mention with Austin FC, Austin sports,
Absolutely.
Like at least the sports in this town are fun to talk about right now. And it's, you've got your Astros jacket on. Like we hadn't even discussed the Astros on this show yet this season, which the way that they've been playing of late is probably a good thing. But, but that's what it just goes to show what kind of like the amount of discussion and energy and everything around Austin right now at these programs, whether it's Austin FC, the entire Texas athletic department. I think tennis team won another Big 12 or won back-to-back Big 12 championships this week. Volleyball today is playing in the regional final against Nebraska here in the next hour or so. It'll probably be done by the time that this show hits your airwaves. But like, look, 15th Elite 8 out of the last 16 years, with a chance to go to another Final Four today. So times are good. We just got to get these football and basketball programs back up into the real national prominence. And things are looking pretty solid. Great. So
it's all great. Baseball's good. Tennis good. Going to get a new swimming and diving coach in here. That's all good. But football is still king. Basketball is behind it. Once those programs take off, and then you start to see why there's a Longhorn network, why Texas sells more merch than anybody else in the country. It's one of the most powerful brands in the world. Like when the football and the basketball programs are right at Texas, that's when you really see, that sort of flex of what Texas could be. And that's what fans of the Longhorns have just been waiting on, is for that sort of return to actually mattering in a national conversation at the big, at the highest level, or I should say the sports that in the eyes of the viewers across the country matter the most, which football and basketball, just to be in that conversation again. And there's a lot of hope right now on the 40 acres for what's to come. And will these coaches be the guys? And
we'll see.
Well,
at least we're at the point.
Tom Herman, so it's.
Oh God. Well, at least we're at the point where we can go. We can reference the take by the Minister of Culture and friend of the show, Matthew McConaughey of it's green lights, man. That's
Yeah, it's all green.
that's what
lights,
everything
yeah.
right now has got the green light, and we'll see if football and basketball take that green light.
Mm.
So we'll know this fall. But yeah, man, we'll wrap it up here. It's been a good one, good Monday edition, and yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. Jay, it's been fun, man.
Yep. Good stuff, man. Good show. Thanks for listening, everybody. Welcome.
See you, everybody. Thank you.
ATX representing. Fatal, baby.
All in 06 on a Saturday. Can it